everyone, today we get to do something a little bit different. We get to try an early test build of Blades of Fire, the upcoming game from Mercury Steam, published by 505 Games. And if you're not familiar with them, they're actually the team that co-developed Metroid Dread, for example, just a few years ago. Very, very capable team. And in this game, they're doing some very interesting things, and I'm going to share it with you today. I will say, when Mercury Steam and 505 Games reached out and asked if I would be interested in checking this out and sponsoring a video on it, I said yes, so long as I'm allowed to say whatever I want to say, positive or negative, and they agreed to those terms in writing, so I'm allowed to say what I like and what I don't like, which, to their credit, is always a good sign to me when a dev is like, no, you're going to like what you see. So yeah, you can say whatever you want, but you're probably going to be saying positive stuff because you're going to like it. I love that confidence, and I can see why they presented it that way, because there's some really interesting things going on here that I'm actually digging a good amount. The quick rundown on what this is it's the latest game from the award-winning studio Mercury Steam, and it is an action-adventure game based around building your own weapons and facing very difficult enemies with an unforgiving and unique combat system. If you'd like to know more about the game, you can of course add it to your wish list or just check it out at the link in the description box below. These zombie guys right here are really basic grunt creatures, but they'll serve the purpose of demonstrating the fundamentals. As you can see in the bottom right, I have a weapon that I've crafted called the Big Cut, and I can use it to attack the enemies and kill them, granting some crafting materials, as you can see on the right side. However, there are a bunch of different weapon types in the game that you can craft, and if they're in your inventory, you can swap to them back and forth, just like this. But you'll see when I select these zombies, they're highlighted green. However, if I highlight a different type of enemy with the same weapon equipped, like this guy, you can see it's orange. That's because there are different armor types for each of these enemies that you have to consider when choosing which weapon you want to equip. But as you can see here, there's also some enemies that have different areas of their bodies with different types of armor even still. And that's because all of the combat in this game is based on directional attacks based on A, X, B, Y. And so you can do overhead attacks, side swipes, or swipe up from the bottom. And because somebody might have really good armor on their arms, but maybe their legs or their head is more vulnerable to the type of weapon you're using, it means that you're constantly reevaluating which type of attack to use against even the same archetype of enemy based purely on the armor that they have. This guy has red arms, which means those side swipes won't deal hardly any damage. They won't break through the armor. It's just not even worth trying. Whereas the green spots you want to target. It's something that seems really, really simple, but it's fantastic. And it really, really makes each and every single encounter, even against grunts, something that you have to think about and process. And as the game goes on, I imagine that there's going to be a lot more variability and dynamics with that, even with certain pieces of armor breaking or things like that changing. So I'm really excited to see where this goes, especially in the late game. You'll also notice in the bottom right that based on the weapon you have, there's different types of durability, and you can sharpen it even in combat by just holding down left on the D-pad, and you can see it sharpens it up right there. But it also is sensitive to the type of attack that you're doing. Such as in this fight, when I was using Doran's sword, which is like the starter sword they give you, you can see that there's the blade, the long edge that's yellow, that is getting weakened because I keep doing these side swipe attacks and these attacks that put pressure on that part of the sword. Whereas if I did jabs and stabbing motion attacks, then it would target the point of the sword, which is still green because I haven't been doing many of those attacks. So it's something where even the durability changes based on the specifics of the type of attack that you're doing, which I love. But perhaps one of the most interesting dynamic shifts with this game is that you have to be very aware of spacing with enemies, and it's much more methodical and slow. So for example, everything is tied pretty much to the stamina management, which is the blue bar you see in the top left. And you have to juggle that by dealing attacks, by rolling and dodging, and also you refill it faster by holding down the block button. So it encourages you to be much slower, more precise, more methodical with your spacing, the pace of your attacks, and evaluating your enemy's attacks. And it makes it for a more like, I don't know, it's a much slower style of combat than you might think when you see the initial gameplay. but it just means that you have to make sure that when you choose to go in for an attack, you're ready to do it, because you can't risk taking one of these hits from one of these big brutes, which is basically going to one-shot you. So you have to be very, very precise. But one of the most interesting things I've noticed is within the forge itself, you see you go to these little anvils and you can use these to like rest, you can repair your weapons and things, which we'll get back to in just a minute, because eventually these weapons are going to break down and need serious repair that you can't just resharpen. So how you do that is you go in here, you either repair the weapon from here, or if you need to craft an actual new version of the weapon, you go to the forge and you can do that. Once you arrive here, you have the ability to go over to what's called your blackboard, which you can see right here, interact with it and select the type of weapon you want to craft. You can see there's a bunch of different ones you can select based on how many of these enemies you've defeated. They have different reaches, they have different material costs, fighting styles, and things like that. And in order to unlock this particular blueprint, for example, I need to kill 3 more trolls on this save file to unlock it. However, for demonstration purposes, let's craft a spear. I'm just gonna hit select on that. And this is where the crazy customization comes in, and where like a lot of ARPG style games, they'll typically just have you throw points at your character, and then that affects like agility, defense, vitality, strength, that type of thing. But in this game, it's based much more on the actual crafting itself. Once you select the type of weapon you want to craft, it brings you into this, and you can see that you can actually choose the materials for each and every part of the weapon based on what you have. And as you can see on the right side, the weapon's materials make a significant difference in the actual stats, not just durability, but also the damage, the type of damage, what it's going to do for certain armor types, all of that. And as you can see, it's based on this triangle of laceration, defense, durability. For the head of the spear, if I go down here and I select what type of wood I want to use for the actual shaft of the spear, I can lean, in this case I only have strong timber, but eventually I'll have others that maybe lean and are more durable but offer lower defense. And then over here, I can lean into more defense, but maybe it breaks more frequently, that type of thing. But once you've selected the equipment and loadout and materials that you're happy with, you can go right here and click forge. And once we hit continue, this is where there's like another layer of mini game built into it, which is actually really satisfying. I'm gonna be real. So he pours the materials in. I'll show you how this works, because it broke my brain the first time I tried to mess with it. And then I was like, oh, I actually kind of dig this. So melts it up. Okay, we got a big block of metal right there, big block of steel. There we go. And then we're gonna forge it. So what exactly is happening here is you see the curve that they recommend with the white outline. Your goal is to get this as close to that as you can. You see, it starts with just a big metallic chunk, but we're gonna break it down by increasing the strength of the hits we're gonna do. You can change the angle of the swing, and you can adjust where on it actually happens. And you can see they give you a rough estimate of what metal is going to go down, what metal might get pushed back up. The metal over on the right side is going to get pushed back up as it kind of squishes back down. And your goal is to follow this outline along the white as close as you can. Now you might wonder, Luke, why? What is the point of this? Can I just like call it good and just hit finished right away? Yeah, you technically can, but the reason you want to do that is for those stars up top. Remember I mentioned that sometimes you're going to want to repair your weapon because it's just going to slowly whittle down and you can't sharpen it enough anymore. Well, this is where those stars come into play, because each star represents one full repair before the weapon just breaks and is useless. So the better job you do crafting and forging, not just with material selection, but also with the actual hammering of the metal, the better the weapon will last in the long term. And the number of stars you get is tied pretty much entirely to how well you follow this curve. So let's do a little time lapse. I'm gonna try to do this, not embarrass myself, because it takes a little getting used to. I'm gonna do my best, okay? Let's go. Boom! Maximum quality reached. I did an okay job. It takes a little getting used to, but honestly, once you get the feel for it, it's actually kind of fun, because it's like, oh, you hit it this way and that pushes the metal off to the left side, but if I hit it straight down, it's gonna squirt out both sides. It's weirdly satisfying once you get the hang of it, and I'll be honest, I kind of dig it. Like, I can see you just crafting a bunch of stuff because you're just having fun. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. But you see right there, I got 4 stars for that. That means I can repair it a total of 4 times, which makes this weapon much more usable from encounter to encounter to encounter, which is the goal, because taking a lot of materials, spending a lot of time, it can be a big deal. And it's nice to be able to do that just quick and easy, you know, to just be a happy camper with plenty of repairs. Booyah. And then we're back. And if I want to return, I can keep crafting if I want to, but I can also just head back and I can either recycle weapons that I don't need anymore. You can see like Doran's sword there. I've got the video weapon. I've got a Multha. Can you tell which one I used a randomized in-game name for? Which ones I named myself? But if I wanted to repair it, you can see I can just like select maybe this one, and I can then it prompts me it's still repairable. I can do that. But if I wanted to repair it, I'll get 14 iron for it, as you see down below. In this case, I don't really need to. So I'm going to just head back to the world. Booyah. But what are you actually doing from like moment to moment in the game? Well, you're working through levels based on the primary objective, which is to get to the queen and to kill her for story reasons that I guess I probably shouldn't spoil, but the story makes sense. And, you know, whether it's anything that's going to win like game of the year or anything, you know, time will tell, but I think it serves the purposes of motivating the story at the very least. And you can see that you have some tighter levels and corridors. The levels I've had access to as part of this preview have been fairly intricate, but to be fair, there have not been many of them. This is a pretty small slice of the game, but there's multiple cutbacks, shortcuts to open up, and they've let me know that this is the goal ultimately for the final game, is to have a lot of kind of interweaving levels and paths and things for players to engage with. In terms of rough outline, I would compare it to maybe God of War 2018. That's kind of what it feels like, where yeah, you can go back to previous areas. You can kind of work your way back and maybe fight bosses or mini bosses that you had trouble with before. But in general, it's going to be fairly straightforward, and you're going to be going through areas and arenas that they have planned for you. And yeah, I'm totally fine with that. It brings me back to like the 360 era of action games, when not everything was trying to be an open world game, and they kind of embraced that sometimes things were going to be a little bit more, you know, handcrafted instead of just purely about throwing the player into a big sandbox. And I'm okay with it. Honestly, I'm okay with it. There's also some long-term upgrades you can expect to have, such as upgrades to total max health, max like defense stats, stamina stats, as you would expect. And then of course, you know, you have the ability to swap in weapons that you've crafted, and you can even get this whole list of 4 weapons. And when you're out playing the game, you can swap between them very, very quickly based on the armor or distances that you want to play at, which is nice to be able to just hot swap between them. So like, oh, I want to actually use the big cut for this one, or actually I want to go great hammer. Let's do this. Skadoosh. Really easy to just swap between them. I actually want to try the video weapon, because this is our spear, and I've not had a chance to try it out yet. Ooh, the sweep. Okay, I could see using that. With some of these weapons, it's much more about the combo. It's about combining B, A, X, and then Y if you want to. It's about combining those and understanding the moves of the enemy so that you can make sure that it's dealing, you know, damage where it needs to. But that was nice, a little sweep action. Okay. And like I said, this is a smaller slice of the game. It is coming out May 22nd. And so, you know, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to see in like the final version of the game. But right now, this is a smaller slice of the game to give us just a taste. But what I will say is that I'm actually really digging what they've done here, because they've taken what could have been just a really simple, like, Souls-like action combat system, and it's just really straightforward. And then they could have done a really basic crafting system where like you just select the materials and it crafts it for you. But instead, they've added in their own little flares, their own unique little bitty things. And I'm a fan. I actually have had a really good time with it, and I'm actually kind of frustrated that the demo isn't longer, because after this cutscene, it ends. Luckily, this is a really cool cutscene. But honestly, I've had a really good time. You know, Mercury Steam is a very accomplished developer, and it, like, a lot of people have been wondering what they've been working on, and to see that they've been working on something pretty unique that also kind of brings up some nostalgic feelings from the 360 and PS3 era, when games were not trying to just be like mini Elden Rings, but were trying to be their own thing with a tighter scope, a little bit more narrow in focus. I like it, honestly, and I'm having a good time. I've had fun. I honestly don't have like really any notes or things. I'm just excited to see where they go with it, because I can see the potential for where this goes in terms of more crafting, more super customized weapon loadouts and abilities that can parry with other enemies and their move sets and their armor loadouts, changing how you have to approach those encounters. I'm a fan of that. I think that it has a lot of potential, and I'm excited to see how it turns out, especially when you think of how you're going to eventually be investing a ton of very valuable materials into certain weapons and crafting them and spending time hammering them out and everything. When you die, you drop the weapon that you were carrying, and you can go pick it up, just like in a Soulsborne game where you go pick up echoes or souls or whatever. But in this case, like, you actually have to go and save your weapon instead of a currency or something. And I can imagine, after spending a ton of time and resources getting a really, really good sword, dying, dropping it, and just being like, I have to get it back. I have to. I like that idea, and I think that it has a lot of potential, especially with some really tough boss fights and stuff that I'm sure they're going to be throwing at us in the final version of the game. But as you can see here, there's a really cool cinematic with a crab bug beetle house, and it takes off.
This is quite remarkable.
It is, indeed. And just like that, they leave you to wait for the final version of the game for when it actually comes out. So I'm a fan, honestly. Again, I appreciate them giving me access to this. I appreciate them being willing to sponsor this video and let me share it with you, and also to let me say whatever I want to say. And frankly, I don't really have much negative. I had fun, and I like, my one note is I wish I could play more right now because I had a good time. So check it out if you're interested. It's going to be coming out May 22nd, Epic Game Store, PlayStation 5, Xbox, all the places you would expect it. So check it out. Links below. Thank you again to Mercury Steam. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Thank you again for watching. I love the gosh darn heck out of every single one of you, and I'll see you in the next video. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.